College football season. A season full of huge rivalries, amazing plays, and an overall intoxicating atmosphere. One way to encapsulate that feeling was through a top-notch video game where you can play as your preferred team and fully dive into that atmosphere. EA has been attempting to recreate all of the hype since 1993, and the series went on for a solid 20 years. But, sadly, that streak would end with the release of NCAA Football 14. And some legal issues going on didn't really help. But the dry spell wouldn't last forever. How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are having a great day today, staying happy, healthy, and safe. Most importantly. That's right, baby, it's football season. Oh, I'm so excited. American football. Gonna go ahead and clarify that. America. Now, both Madden and the NCAA games were a huge part of my childhood. Specifically, NCAA 10 on the PSP. You're old! Now, one of my favorite things to do in NCAA 10 was to just make a running back, max out his stats as quickly as possible, and just run through every team without any issues like I was a gift from God. Now, back then on the PSP version of NCAA 10, I specifically remember there not being any wear and tear, so my running back got the ball every chance he got, and the scores usually looked pretty bad. So when College Football 25 was officially announced after a 10-year hiatus, I knew I had to get the Platinum. For me, there was nothing more exciting than playing as your favorite team, go Hokies, and just wiping the floor with not only your conference rivals, but everybody else on your schedule, as well as getting that top dog national championship trophy. Now, if you know me, or even if you're new to this channel, I don't really play a whole lot of sport-themed games, mainly sticking to single-player stories or Call of Duty here and there. But this one had a special place on my radar. Now, when I first started going for this Platinum, it was July, August, whenever the game released, so my bad. But College Football 25 was the perfect way to scratch that itch of seeing football on some sort of screen early. So come with me. Let's lace up our cleats, grab some Gatorade, and let's dive into this Platinum experience for College Football 25. The moment was finally here. College Football 25 was here, and it was time to see how good I actually was after all the years of not playing a solid football game. I wanted to dive into the Road to Glory mode first, as one of the more time-consuming trophies was tied to this mode, where I had to achieve the Heisman Trophy. Now, if you aren't an American football fan, the Heisman Trophy is delegated each year to only one player in the entire country that truly stood out among the rest. Kind of think of it as the Olympic gold medal for college football. With that being said, I created my player, named appropriately of course, and chose the college I was going to play for. For me, there was only one option. The Virginia Tech Hokies, baby. It's a copyrighted song, so don't get me in trouble, YouTube. Ba boo boo doo boo boo doo. Boo boo doo boo boo. Boo 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 boo. Boo 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 ba 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 ba. As a kid, I basically grew up in Blacksburg, Virginia, and playing for the Virginia Tech Hokies when I got to college was always a dream of mine. We see how that went. Thankfully, we have video games. Now, with the Road to Glory mode, there aren't a lot of trophies tied to the things you can accomplish, which I was a bit let down. And honestly, in my opinion, I felt like this was the mode, other than PvP, that required the most time. The start of my first year had plenty of obstacles to get around, but I was ready to make this team the best it had ever been. I studied plenty, and worked hard in practice, and I eventually made it to my first position battle. where I competed against the player ahead of me on the roster to try and take his spot. Thankfully, these aren't super hard, so I officially became halfback number 2, the backup to our starting running back, Baishal Tootin. With this accomplished, I was finally able to get into some decent reps throughout the season and even made progress on my overall stats. Now, the season had started really well. We were getting some really good reps and our team was still winning. And then our first big rivalry game came up against the Miami Hurricanes. Now, going into this game, I knew it was going to be rough since the Canes had a better overall stat line than we did. But I was determined to make sure that our team came out on top. And most of this game was back and forth, score for score, and inch for inch. I even made a very crucial block that freed up our wide receiver for a very long touchdown to bring us up by 1. With this being our first real big experience with an ACC rivalry game, it's no wonder that this game was nothing short of a brawl. Unfortunately, with me being taken out for the entire third quarter and most of the fourth, we ended up coming up short, 39-31. Unfortunately, that is one of the perks of being HB2 and not having that starting position. With that loss behind us, I knew I needed to put in more time and to get that HB1 spot to help prevent any future mishaps. So, I got back to practice, outshined our current HB1, and took the reins of this Hokie offense. With me at the helm, finally, we were able to win some very crucial games against some conference rivals such as Georgia Tech and Boston College. I even played a major part in a huge road win against Syracuse. Take that, Tim the Tatman. All of that confidence and our newfound skills brought us to week 11 at home against yet another tough conference game against the number 2 team in the nation, the Clemson Tigers. Coming into this game, we had worked our way to being 22nd in the nation. So a win here could potentially put us in a spot to make it to the playoff bracket. This game started off really slow. Neither team could get much of anything going, but with a couple of good runs by yours truly and some well-placed passes, you started to pull ahead in this down and dirty fight of a football game. And thankfully, we were finally able to put the Tigers to bed and pulled off possibly the biggest upset of the entire year. With this win, I knew that nothing could stand in the way of obtaining the first ever Virginia Tech National Championship win. Well, almost nothing. After a very close call with Duke, the basketball school, and the win over the 2-9 Virginia Cavs, that set us up to play the Kansas City Jayhawks for the first round of the 2024 National Championship playoffs. Now, the Jayhawks definitely gave us a little trouble, but we were able to squeak out a win in the snow, mind you, winning 24-10. Now, while the first game in our playoff run was a little close for comfort, the next game I was extremely terrified for. The number 2 team in the nation, the Alabama Crimson Tide, was my next opponent. Now, not only was Alabama the clear favorite, but we had also lost our starting QB, Kyron Drones, in the last game due to some injuries. So, once again, I had everything against me going into this game. What started off as a one-sided game in our favor, our defense decided, we needed more of a challenge against one of the top teams in the nation. We had a 14-point lead at the start of the fourth quarter, and we almost gave it away. After a very disappointing offensive drive that ended up in a field goal, Alabama answered back with a very fast touchdown that put them down only 3 points. But thankfully, we were able to kill the rest of the clock and held on to win this massive game. That left only 1 game left for the season and 1 game left to attempt and win the Heisman. Now, how epic would it have been to not only win the national championship my first season as a freshman and win the Heisman? That would be cool, right? Well, unfortunately, the game decided I was doing too well this season, and I got injured in the first quarter. And the fate of the rest of our season was left up to the RNG gods. Our season ended with an unfortunate loss. But I decided to play on to the next season. and we ended up back in the national championship game under better circumstances. We held on for another close game to win the biggest game of the season and the biggest game of my career. This brought us our first trophy of the game, which meant we were well on our way to getting the platinum. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the Heisman Trophy in either season, so I decided to take a quick break from the Road to Glory mode and get some of the easier trophies. Now, most of the trophies in this game can be done offline and be done fairly quickly. Now, the first one we went for was simply just getting a 50 or more yard rushing touchdown. I picked Oregon since they have one of the top offenses in the game, and I chose to play against the Buffalo Bulls, a team with less than stellar stats in the MAC conference. It only took a couple of offensive drives, and the trophy was mine. I was also able to get an 80-plus yard passing touchdown in this game, so we got a 2-for-1 deal. Now, the next trophy we were going for required us to force a turnover that triggered a unique celebration. For this trophy to pop, you'll need to play as a team that has a special turnover celebration. I recommend starting up a game with two teams that are pretty big rivals. This could be Virginia Tech and Virginia, or even West Virginia and Pittsburgh. I decided to show my home state some love and chose to play as WVU. Thankfully, WVU has a really solid and aggressive defense, which produced us an awesome fumble recovery touchdown, as well as netted us our next trophy. Now, the next two trophies are very straightforward. All you'll need to do is start up the Ultimate Team mode and play through some of the starter challenges to help you prepare for it. With that, you'll pop both of the trophies. It all starts here, and challenge accepted. Now, the last two trophies in this part of the video were actually really fun to accomplish. We needed to have a player get 200 or more yards in both rushing yards and passing yards, as well as score a touchdown in a rivalry game on the last play to win. Now, the stat line alone may seem pretty daunting, but I can assure you, very easy. So, the plan was to focus only on offense and have my defense just let the other team walk into the end zone. Let's just say Kyron Drones, the quarterback for Virginia Tech, had the best game of his entire career. And now, with all those easy trophies done, let's hop back into the Road to Glory mode and get our Heisman. Since my halfback Road to Glory felt like it was just at a standstill, I figured making a new All-Star at a different position would help me get that coveted Heisman Trophy. So, I channeled my inner Matt Maher III and created the greatest quarterback to ever step onto the gridiron. Jack Mehoff. Yes, I'm immature. No, I don't care. This 5-star quarterback decided to grace the South Carolina Gamecocks. Yep, that was intentional. With his godlike talent. Coming into the season, we immediately became QB number 1 and went on a tear throughout the first season in South Carolina. Not only did they have a future Hall of Famer at the head of the offense, but South Carolina had a monster of a halfback with Raheem Sanders. While normally this would be a good thing, but Sanders was already a Heisman contender. So, while I wanted to dominate anyone in our way, I also had to make sure I outperformed our star halfback. But more on that later. While beating up on smaller teams was fun and good for stats, our first real challenge came when we played the number 19 LSU Tigers. If we won this game, that would be a massive statement not only for our first season at South Carolina, but it would look good for the Heisman as well. The game started off just like any other. By the end of the third quarter, we were dominating 49-21. But, for some reason, the computer doing computer things, I got taken out of the game, and it almost lost us the game. We ended up in overtime and barely squeaked out a win, 64-62. It was way too close for comfort. One of my few issues with this game is that with this mode, you get taken out at the worst possible times, or for no reason at all, and it can almost cost you a game. Also, there's no way to actually fix that, so maybe we could try to do better next time? But regardless, we moved on to the rest of the season. Easily the highlight of the season was our game against Akron. Now I know, beating Akron isn't anything to write home about, but it's the way we beat them. From scoring a 60-plus yard QB sneak touchdown to not only breaking a school record, but setting the second highest scoring record in all of NCAA. Now, the technical highest scoring game was back in 1916, held by Georgia Tech against a team called Cumberland. It's an interesting story for sure. I highly recommend giving it a read. But with this game, we wanted to make a statement to the whole country who we were, and I believe winning 105-17 was the statement we needed to let everyone know we were serious. Sadly, that high was cut short when we lost a simulated game against a 0-0 record FCS Southeast team, but I don't like to count those games since they aren't actual teams. But regardless, we made it to the SEC Championship against LSU, and once again, we dominated on offense, leading us yet to another victory. Now, after championship weekend, that's when the Heisman is officially announced, and like it has been all year between our boy Jack and his right-hand man, Raheem Sanders. Now, we may not have gotten the Heisman during our freshman year, but our sophomore year was set up for nothing but success. We got the Heisman and our trophy, as well as a horde of other accolades to help sum up the dynamic career of Jack Mehoff. To celebrate getting the Heisman, I needed to win the national championship once again, but this time in Dynasty mode, to give me the last trophy I needed before I tortured myself with the online modes. Now thankfully, this is a trophy you can just sim the entire season and eventually win it, so do yourself a favor, pick number 1 Georgia, sim the entire season until you win the national championship. To my surprise, this actually took about 5 or 6 attempts. RNG was not on our side. But we eventually got it, and we got our last trophy. Now it's time for online. Now, it's no secret that I'm not a huge fan of PvP trophies, mainly because I get way too invested and I can lose my cool very quickly. But I was this far into getting the Platinum Trophy, so I wasn't going to let anything or anyone get in my way. Now, my first game was a very close one, but I was ahead with only a short time left. And this happened. No onside, okay. Are you kidding me? God. Right. Yeah, I'm not proud of it. Silver lining of this is we did walk away with the first of the only 3 online trophies that we would need to get the Platinum. After a rage quit and another tough loss, I decided to switch it up and play as the South Carolina Gamecocks once again. Now, I may not have had my star QB this go round, but I had finally been matched up against someone that was at least around my skill level. After a pick 6 and a scoop and score fumble recovery, something amazing happened. Defense! Defense! Yes! Yes! I finally won a game! That's right, we had won our very first online game of College Football 25 and taken that first step to getting freshman status. Now, while the rest of my first season wasn't anything to write home about, I was able to beat a very tough Ohio State team which got me my next trophy for beating an opponent with a higher tier. Now for that trophy we just got, you kinda have to understand the tier system in College Football 25. In total, there are 3 different tiers. Tier 1 is teams that pretty much are in really good contention for the national championship, such as Alabama and Georgia. Tier 2 teams are still very solid teams. They haven't quite made a dynasty name for themselves yet. Kind of like West Virginia, Virginia Tech, UVA, teams of that nature. Now, Tier 3 teams are colleges that you may or may not heard of. Kind of like the Raging Cajuns, Kennesaw State, Western Kentucky, teams of that nature. Now, to get that what an upset trophy we were just talking about, you'll need to play as a Tier 2 or Tier 3 team and beat either a Tier 1 or Tier 2 team respectively. So if you're playing as a Tier 3 team, you have to beat a Tier 2 or Tier 1. If you're playing as a Tier 2 team, you have to beat a Tier 1 team. Kind of self-explanatory. Now this can be quite tough, especially since it's an online trophy, but after enough practice, I'm confident anyone can get this trophy. With that out of the way, we only had one trophy left where I would have to advance to freshman rank in the online road to glory. With the struggles I was having, I figured out that my defensive capabilities was easily my weakest point. So, I needed to figure out what I was doing wrong. First off, I want to give a huge shout out to EricRayWeather here on YouTube. I'll leave the link to his channel in the description. Eric has loads of videos explaining some of the ins and outs of this game, and after finding those videos, I had a new strategy and more confidence going into my next season. With our newfound confidence and defensive strategy, I was able to beat people playing teams that should have just wiped the floor with me. From Alabama, Oregon, and even Georgia, I was winning games that I simply shouldn't have. With only 3 games left in the regular season, I found myself with a record of 5-2. This was easily the high point for me in this whole experience, since I'm not what you call experienced in competitive college football games. After another extremely close win over yet another Alabama user, this happened. So, I think my game's broken. Now this is Recruit. Don't burn me in the comments, but I can just quit here, right? So yeah, after practicing and studying a little bit, we were now considered top ranked in our season, and it wasn't even over yet. Now, before you guys roast me in the comments, technically I was still unranked, whatever. I'm not a PvP guy, I'm a story-driven guy, but you know what? I love college football. But if you do want to leave a comment, why don't you guys go ahead and subscribe while you're down there. At the end of the season, we ended up going 7-3, losing twice to South Carolina, which made me think that our boy Jack was back with a vengeance. But while I was waiting for my final trophy to pop, I quickly realized that I needed to actually finish the season in order for it to pop up. So, I decided to see how far I could actually take it. What do you know? Our first game in the College Football 25 tournament was against the South Carolina Gamecocks. This was my chance. This was my chance to break the streak and have the most epic Cinderella story of the entire... Regardless, we got the trophy and the platinum. All in all, College Football 25 was a great first step into bringing the franchise back. Not only for the veteran players who have been playing NCAA games since they started, but to even some newcomers who might have a chance at making a name for themselves online. As far as trophy hunting goes, the 3 out of 10 difficulty rating that the PSNP gave it holds up. I would even give it a 4 out of 10 simply due to having online trophies, and not everyone that trophy hunts is on the same skill level. Overall, this was a great experience, and I highly recommend adding this one to your trophy cabinet. It finally felt great to have a very solid college football game again after way too long. And honestly, I can't wait to see what the future holds for this franchise. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, we'll see you then. Peace.